ever joined one of these discussions? It's relaxed.
Talking about she was reading the law from this story and discussed it.
Well, I haven't read that story, so it'll be different. Yeah. He doesn't read. I just, yeah. No, I agree. Thank you. Well, I'm ready if everyone else is.
It's time. It's time.
It's time to start. Well, I'm approximate. I believe everything in Russia is not always on time. It's always approximate, right? So I'm following procedures. So my name is Davidson Howarth, but you can just call me Dave. My friends call me Dave. It's a little bit more informal. I use Davidson for my author title, so just call me Dave. You know, I've been in Russia for a couple of weeks now. When I was here last time, I was here for 2 days and only 3 hours sleep. This time I'm nursing a sore throat. So, you know, it happens when you get a California boy out here and sees no clouds in the sky. It's like, wow, it looks like California outside. And then you walk out and you're like, oh my gosh, it's cold. And then you spend the whole day walking around in a t-shirt and then you catch a sore throat. So, you know, but I've seen some interesting sights here. So it's first time in Russia. It's a fascinating country, for sure. From my understanding, the discussion today is going to be movies and literature. I have a background in both. I'm an author. I've written 4 books, 3 for TSR, which is a publishing company for fantasy novels. I don't know if you've heard of TSR before. Very big in the United States. They produce books, Dungeons and Dragons. It's also a role-playing game, and many other things. I left them just because of creative differences, and my last book that I wrote, The Dragon of Prowley, which was released last month, is strictly my own. I did it so no one can tell me how to write, basically. I know I mentioned this a couple weeks ago that the reason why I left was, you know, they have a story they want you to do. You're writing the story and they say, well, we want you to do it this way, we want you to do it that way, and then you feel, well, no, I think this is right, and then they tell you, well, no, we're paying you. You write the way we want you to, and I just got tired of that. So The Dragon of Prowley is something strictly my own. Just a little bit about the book. I don't want to get too much into the book because we're not here to talk about the book. We're here to talk about movies, which is my favorite, one of my favorite subjects. So, but the book has some fascinating things. The dragon was completely my own that I created myself. I don't think there's a dragon as complex as the one I created for my book. You can Google it, you know, just Google my name or The Dragon of Prowley. I have business cards here. I'll just put them on the table. You can grab one. They're not as beautiful as Russian business cards. These are very cheap. So, you know, take one and you could just go ahead and just type in my name, Google it, and go to Amazon.com. My book's there. It's sold in all English-speaking countries and also Korea. But I haven't spoken to my publisher and asked why Korea. So it's the only country selling it that doesn't speak English. So I don't know why they're interested. So a little bit about my background in regards to movies. I mentioned this in the last lecture, or when I was here a couple weeks ago. I started writing when I was 6 years old.
Okay, close it.
Yes. I started writing when I was 6 in elementary school. Started writing plays And I was so busy writing, even during school, when they were doing mathematics and English, I was writing stories, and the teacher says to me, you know, your grades are horrible, all you're doing is writing. And I said, well, that's all I want to do. They said, well, to survive in life, you need mathematics, you need history, English, you know, and all these things I learned in school, I don't use on an everyday basis. I still just write. That's what I do. So I said, well, if you get good grades, you can go ahead and write. So what I was doing is I was doing my mathematics, getting good marks, and still writing. And the teacher and the principal, the dean of the school, allowed me to bring in my friends as actors, and we would take my screenplay and we would perform them for the school, you know, so all the other classes can watch. And I remember in the late 70s, I was watching a movie on TV called Airplane 1975 with Charlton Heston. I don't know if you've ever heard of that movie. It's one of these disaster film movies, plane crashes and the whole thing. And I wrote a similar storyline to that, and I had on the stage, you know, all these chairs lined up like inside of an airplane, and a couple chairs up front like a cockpit, and you know, being 6 years old, and some of the friends that I had who were acting in my screenplay, they would forget the words, and I remember I told them just improv, and improv is if you get stuck on a line, just make things up and make it real, you know, and it ended up being pretty good, you know, it was exciting. So from 6 years old on, I just kept writing. In the 90s I was working for TSR. Before TSR and after, I was doing a lot of screenplays, a lot for movies. None of my screenplays for movies sold. My screenplays for commercials did and do. My last commercial was for Netflix. I don't know if you've ever heard of Netflix. It's a movie rental company, and you don't have to go. They don't have like locations like stores. You go ahead and you order online, and they ship it to your house. When you're done watching the movie, you just ship it back, and it just goes back and forth, and it gets there like in the day. So that commercial was shown like they told me an hour before the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is NFL professional football, American football. Unfortunately for me, I never had the chance to see it, because what happened was I went to Netflix as a freelancer, said, look, here's my script, check it out, you know, if you like it. They told me right away, yeah, we love this, we want to use it. So they paid me, and once they pay me, they can do whatever they want with it. I have no control over it whatsoever. And they gave me a call, said it's in production, and it will be shown during the Super Bowl. Well, during the Super Bowl, I was running late. And then right as I was driving to my dad's house to watch the Super Bowl, because I don't have TV. I try to stay away from TV as much as possible. It just, you know, I just like to write. I spend, you know, 10 hours a day on the computer. So I don't have much time for TV. So on the way to see the Super Bowl, my car started shaking. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? You know. So I get out, and the tire's completely flat. Yeah, so I had to call a tow truck to take me to a mechanic to change the tire. And I thought, it's Sunday, Super Bowl, nobody's on the street. Everybody is at home watching the Super Bowl. Well, get to the mechanic, and they're, well, everyone else is getting their tires done. It's going to take about 3 hours. So I said, well, can you please hurry it up? And he actually ended up getting it done within an hour. So I ended up getting to my dad's place, missing half of the game and missing my commercial. So, and they only showed it once, and that was it. And I called Netflix, and I said, well, you know, I missed my commercial. And they're, well, you can always come on over, and then we'll show it to you on the big screen. They have this big conference room with a giant screen. It's pretty amazing. And I said, I'm not driving 2 hours to see my commercial, so I'll just find it on YouTube somewhere eventually, you know. But the last screenplay I wrote was right after the Passion of the Christ. I think I mentioned this during the lecture. I liked Mel Gibson's work in that movie, just amazing. The visuals is just amazing. And I enjoyed Braveheart, that Mel Gibson had directed, a fantastic movie. It's not entirely historically accurate, but nevertheless it's a fantastic movie, and he inspired me to write something for him, historical, and I did. And it was about Spanish conquistadors conquering Mexico. And if you've ever been to California, I don't know if you have or not, it's really a melting pot of every nationality in the world. Everybody is there. If I want to get Mexican food, which is predominantly, most of the restaurants are Mexican, so I eat a lot of Mexican food, burritos, tostadas, and you have to know some Spanish to get around, you know. But everyone's there. Even you have a lot of Russian people there. You know, I pick up Russian phone cards, pierogies. You know, all the basic, you know, elements of Russian life you can find in California. I mean, you name it. You can find food from Tanzania in California. It's all there. So it's one big melting pot. But being so close to Mexico, I felt I wanted to write a historical screenplay involving, you know, Mexico and conquistadors, which I find an amazing history. I don't know if any of you have been to Mexico. It's an experience, but if you go, just be very careful, because Mexico City is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. I mean, if you don't know Spanish, don't go. Don't even leave the airport. So I ended up taking a small charter plane into the Yucatan jungle, because Mel Gibson also did a movie called Apocalypto. Have any of you heard of that movie at all? It's about the Mayan culture, and it's very accurate, and it was all done in Mayan, but there's subtitles underneath so you can read what they're saying, kind of like the Passion of the Christ, right? So I went running around, climbing, you know, Mayan temples for 2 weeks, studying the culture, and it was that time I thought, well, you know, I think I'm going to write a screenplay. You know, I like Apocalypto, the Mayan culture, the conquistadors, how they invaded Mexico and enforced religion upon the people, and what have you. It's similar to American history and American Indian history to an extent. So I wrote this screenplay specifically for Mel Gibson, once I finished it, I wrote him a letter telling him I don't want to be paid for it. I'm just giving it to you. You know, just, you can have it, do what you want with it, throw it away for all I care. 99.9% of the chance you're going to just end up throwing it away. I mean, Mel Gibson, you know, he's a big guy. So I sent it to his agent, and I haven't heard anything since, and that was quite some time ago. But like I mentioned in the lecture, I found out through the grapevine that he is making a new movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. But it's not about Spanish conquistadors conquering Mexico, it's about Vikings conquering England. So I'm hoping that maybe he read my script and thought, well, it's good, but I'll change things around in case this Dave guy wants to come back at me and sue me or something. Because that's what happens in Hollywood. People will take your story and use it. I had an offer from DreamWorks. I mentioned this at the lecture as well. I had an offer from DreamWorks. I was in talks with them about creating an animated movie for the book I finished, The Dragon of Crowley, and my situation was I didn't want an animated movie, I wanted a live action, like Lord of the Rings and Narnia, and they wanted to see the book. Well, the book wasn't completely finished yet, and it wasn't under copyright. So I felt that if I showed it to them, they could have read it and produced it, and then what would they say? They would have just taken it, and I would say, well, I wrote this, and they would say, well, what proof? You know, it's not copyrighted. They copyrighted it for you, so you have to be very careful in Hollywood because people just take things from you. I mentioned to Marina before coming to Moscow, you know, we have these stereotypes of Moscow. Very tough city, you know. People, you don't want to look people in the eyes. You want to look down. You just want to look tough. You know, all these things. So I'm coming into Moscow thinking, okay, I have to look tough. I have to look tough. You know, and been here 2 weeks, and I will say, for me, living in California all my life, it is easier to live in Moscow than it is Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a much tougher place. I think the West in general is a tougher place. In Los Angeles, here I can walk down the street and look people in the eye and look tough, and they just kind of look at me for a second, then kind of look down a little bit. In LA, you look someone in the eye, they continue just to look you in the eye, then you look them in the eye, and you know, guys, men have pride, and the game in LA, or pretty much California, is whoever looks away first loses the staring battle. So what happens is you get two guys looking at each other, and then when one starts feeling, okay, this is enough, he'll say, "What's up, man? Why are you looking at me?" And then the other guy says, "What's up? You want to get in my face?" And then there's a fight. You see what happened? Right there, it happens. It doesn't happen a lot. Predominantly it happens like in Compton, you know, the bad parts of Los Angeles. But there were times I would be walking down Studio City, which is a part of LA. It's where they have Universal Studios. They have a lot of movie production companies there, Universal Pictures, you know, 20th Century Fox, all these. And it's a very nice area. It's not hard to walk down the street and bump into an actress or an actor there. They just walk the streets, you know, and you know, they go to the same hair salons most of the time and shop at the same places. So, you know, seeing someone from the movies there, it's just no big deal. You just kind of leave them alone. But so it's a place where you don't have a lot of trouble. But those rules, the same rules still apply, where you just get in that stare down, and next thing you know, you're like, you know, bumping chests. You know what I mean? So for me, Los Angeles is definitely a much tougher city than Moscow, which to some may surprise. But you know, but I've enjoyed the time here, and I plan on coming back in a couple of months, and probably come more. So let me go into the movies a little bit. I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this at the last lecture, but my father, he was an artist. He was very good. I tried my hand at drawing, but I was so bad at it. All my stick figures were naked, you know, there was no clothes, and he was fantastic, and he's in his 70s now, and in the 50s he was friends with an actress named Jane Mansfield. I don't know if any of you heard of her. She was the rival to Marilyn Monroe in the 50s, and they were very good friends. He would always go to her house, and she had this giant swimming pool, and she was married to I forget his first name, but his last name was Hargitay. He was Mr. Universe in the 50s. And he would go over there all the time. In fact, he would go there when she's not even home, and he'd just hang out with the maids, you know. And he was doing dress design at the time, and he designed this dress for Jane Mansfield. Well, he gave it to her and said, you know, this is for you, kind of like what I did with Mel Gibson, this is for you. And she didn't say nothing about it. And one day she gives him a call and says, "You need to go out and see my new movie, The Girl Can't Help It." I think the release was 1957. And he's, "Oh, I wonder what this whole surprise is," you know. So the beginning of the movie, she's walking down the street, you don't see nothing, just her face, and she's just smiling, you know. And all the guys on the street, they're turning around, the guys are fainting, they're like jaw-dropping, they're like, "Wow, this woman is incredibly amazing," you know, and guys are whistling at her, guys are driving and hitting other cars and, you know, and crashing. And they show her full body, and she's wearing the dress my dad designed for her, which is amazing. And it was pure black dress, very tight, sleek, something you usually wouldn't wear in the 50s, you know, because the 50s was pretty conservative. And now that I watched the movie and knowing my dad, I said, yeah, my dad definitely designed that, because my dad was very much into ladies. My dad was always a ladies' man, you know. So yeah. So being raised by my dad, you know, I was always into movies, a little bit into the industry. My dad used to take me to an old movie theater, cinema, that would show old movies, Hollywood movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I don't know if they show a lot of those type of American movies here, like Marx Brothers or Cary Grant movies or anything like that. I'm at a blank of other 50s movie stars, but Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, you know, yeah, these classic movies, and we'd go, yeah, we'd go every weekend.
The young Philadelphians.
Yeah, yeah.
And All About Eve.
Yeah, All About Eve, yeah. Mickey Rooney, yeah, and we'd go every weekend and watch these movies on the big screen, and that's where I fell in love with movies. My favorite movie of all time is Ben-Hur. I don't know if any of you heard of that movie at all. It stars Charlton Heston. It's a long movie. Historical movie. It's historical fiction. It won Best Picture in 1956. It's a very long movie. It's what we call an epic movie. It's you know, it has a cast of thousands of people because back then they didn't have special effects. No, that was Charlton Heston. Yes, yeah. Because in the 50s they didn't have computers. Nowadays, if you want a big battle with soldiers, you can just computer generate everybody. 1 million people, you know, click of a button. Back then, you didn't have computers. So if you wanted an army of 2,000 people, you literally had to have 2,000 people, 2,000 shields, 2,000 swords. You had to dress them all up like Roman soldiers, you know, and it was a big undertaking. You will not find movies today made like they were back then. They were really authentic movies. And the epic movies would last 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Ben-Hur was about 4.5 hours. Spartacus with Kirk Douglas was about 4 hours. Lawrence of Arabia, which with Peter O'Toole, was a great movie, 1962. That was probably one of the last big epic movies, you know. But that was what, about 5 hours long. So you would sit there in the theater, and they would have what they would call an overture, which would be just a blank screen, and the music, the soundtrack would just, you know, would just blare through the theater, and people in the lobby would say, "Oh, the music's on. That means go sit in our seat. The movie's about to start." And you sit and listen to the music for about 10 minutes, and then the big credits would start in the movie, and then midway in the movie they'd have an intermission where people can get up, get more snacks, you know, kind of talk, and then go back and watch the movie. Because the movies were so long, you couldn't sit there in one sitting and watch the whole movie. You had to really take a break. So if you plan on going to the movie, spend half the day there, you know. I prefer movies. I prefer older movies. Some of the newer movies are great, but movies from the 50s and 40s are probably the best, because it's all about the writing. You know, it's all about the scripts. It's all about the acting. Today, it's more about special effects, you know, things like that. American movies are different than movies from the rest of the world. Most American movies, you need car chases, you need gunfights. You constantly need something going on. You know, a lot of European movies, it's just two guys sitting at a table for 2 hours talking. You know, Americans won't go and see that kind of movie. You know what I mean? I mean, you need some kind of action. But I'll tell you, I was at the cinemas last night. It was the Dome Cinemas. I don't know if any of you have heard that in Moscow. And it's near a giant hotel. And the hotel was just it was complete rubbish. The theater, I felt like walking in there. It was like the 1960s. I'm like, where's all the neon lights and all the popcorn and sodas? And you know, it didn't have any of that. And went there to see Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was in English. That's why I went, because I'll get to that later. But I was watching it. It was just a fantastic movie. So if you guys want to go see a movie, you should go see Shutter Island. It's written like, you know, the classic movies, and it has a very surprise ending. I won't tell you anything about it, but I will tell you, after seeing that movie, you'll walk out and you'll be like, wow, amazing. And 2 hours after the movie, you'll be sitting at home still thinking about the movie. And I guarantee you, when you go to bed that night, you'll still be thinking about the movie. That's how good the script is. One thing about American movies, here in Russia, I noticed that the movies, when there's American movies, like for example, Alice in Wonderland, I see promos for that everywhere, even at bus stops, like Alice in Wonderland. You know, it's like wow. But you know, it's all, you know, Russian language, and went to the cinema. It's all dubbed in Russian. In the United States, we don't do dubbing at all. At least in California, we don't. I know in New York they don't. The reason for that is Americans want to watch the movie exactly the way the director wanted it. You know, we don't want anything dubbed, no voiceovers. The only thing we have for voiceovers is Godzilla Japanese movies. That's about it, and they're done really bad. Or karate movies, old Bruce Lee movies, just movies that are bad in general. Because the karate